Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today from Kirkland, Washington State in the USA, Jess Dewell, who's the founder and CEO of Red Direction, and Red Direction help business owners committed to building a thriving business. Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, Jess. It's a real privilege to have you as my guest.
Jürgen, it is my privilege to be your guest. I'm so glad to be here today. Thank you for having me.
And Kurian Tharakan, who was our guest on episode 459 of the InnovaBuzz podcast, he suggested that we have a conversation with you and introduced us. So big hello to Kurian.
Big hello. Yeah, he was on our podcast too, over at the Bold Business Podcast, Jürgen. And we were talking about all kinds of different things. It was superb that he chose to connect the two of us.
Yeah. He must have been impressed because he said, I've just been on this wonderful podcast with this amazing lady, so I think you'd enjoy speaking with her. All right. Now, you work with leadership teams to identify and set their true north, which is where the business name comes from. I think Red Direction. It's a play on the compass, the red pointer on the compass. And also you produce your own podcast, Build the Bold Business Podcast. I'm getting Build and Bold confused, but it's all one thing, right?
It is.
And you're also a self-confessed creature of curiosity, which is something that I really identify with. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation today and exploring all those things. Now, before we dig into the work you do, what's the impact you're making in the world?
I create a really bright stage for people who don't want to be on stage by themselves, is really, I think, what it comes down to. I have a lot of belief in a lot of things, and if you need some to get to where you're going, I am a great cheerleader. That's like my purpose in this world. You say, oh, you're doing something? So great. And I know I've said this twice to you, and I will now say it a third time. Whatever is the thing that's in front of me is my favorite thing, and that makes the impact in the world the most possible right here in the present, each day, each moment.
That's an amazingly concise and powerful mindset to have, and it really forces you. Well, it doesn't. I don't know whether it forces you. It really just makes sure you're present in the moment, right? Because you say, "This is my favorite thing. I'm doing it right now."
I'm doing it right now, and if I can't be all in, why am I doing it at all? That would be the thing, right? If I can't be all in, I probably shouldn't be doing it. And I could say that's probably true for everybody that's listening too. Can we be all in that time that we've committed? And if not, how come?
Yeah. Wonderful. So you talked about a stage. So tell me more about that. Explain the metaphor.
I don't know if that was actually really a good metaphor to use. Usually, so a stage, right? We all have to be some place. We all have this belief. We all have this thing we want to do. And sometimes we don't have enough courage by ourselves. Sometimes we need that outside set of eyes. We need that person that we can lean on, different than a mentor, different than a coach, different even than a consultant, which is, by the way, that's the part of the world. That's my day job, is consulting. The whole concept, though, is how do you get enough oomph when times get tough, when things get hard? I call them when the grindy bits show up. How do we keep going through that? And that stage is a place that's like, well, you're here. Are you going to go? Are you ready for what's next? Even if you're not, you're already here. Let's make the most of it.
It kind of reminds me of my childhood. We used to have swimming once a week, and the swimming pool built this new diving pool with a tower, a platform, a 10-meter tower. So the challenge was, and I was like, I don't know, 12 or something. Of course, I dare you to go up to the 10-meter and jump off that. And I wasn't a good swimmer. I was probably one of the weakest swimmers. And I remember getting up to that 10-meter platform and standing there, and I'm afraid of heights as well. Right?
You really went all
out. So I remember climbing up to the 10-meter platform was actually a huge achievement for me. So I'm up there on this 10-meter platform, and I'm kind of edged to the edge of the platform, and kind of looked over and nearly fell over because I was so queasy. And I thought, this is really crazy. And eventually I thought, I'm up here. climbing down's probably just going to be just as hard and take longer. So I jumped off feet first.
Oh, so there was you actually were present enough, even in all of that, to go, well, I could go down. There's two ways down, right?
Yeah.
Which do I want?
That's
And you're
right.
doing an evaluation.
I've got to go down, actually.
Yeah. And well, was it as painful as you thought? Was it as scary as you thought once you decided to go over the edge of that diving platform?
Well, obviously the outcome was okay.
That's right. We're here.
I didn't.
You can talk about it.
I didn't hurt myself. I didn't drown. The diving pool was deep, but it wasn't very big, so it was pretty easy. Once I got back to the surface, pretty easy to get to the edge and crawl out. But I never went back up again.
Hey, was there a sense of accomplishment or I'm so glad that's over?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's the part we don't realize. Even when we're scared, even when we're facing something, even when we could go back the way we came and we choose to or we choose not to, there is a sense of accomplishment that can be harnessed because we did it. We made the choice.
That's right. And so talk to me a little bit about those moments where we're faced with decisions like that in business.
Every day. Every day. One of the funniest, well, and it could even be from pencils, and I'm going to get out of business for just a second because, there
again.
Pencils.
We talked swimming and diving. Now we're talking pencils.
Now we're talking pencils, but I'm going to talk about toothpaste instead, right? So we make decisions either quickly or slowly and in general. So as long as we know how we're making our own decisions, it's really important. And when we're making decisions with other people, it's really important to understand how they are making decisions and making sure that even if they don't really fully know, that they understand what the motivation is behind the way they're making decisions, right? Do you go off the board? Do you go back down the ladder? And when we know those things and we're working together as people in a group, as a team, one of the things we have to keep in mind is what really matters. And I can tell you toothpaste in the grand scheme of things does not really matter. And this is a household thing. My husband and I can agree on all kinds of things. Big picture vision. Where do we want to go? What do we want to do? Here's where we want to live. This is what we're thinking. But when it comes down to the day-to-day, the brand of toothpaste, we cannot decide and agree to save our lives. So we each have different toothpaste now. That was our solution. We each it's not how you use the toothpaste. It's which toothpaste do you use? And I think that that's important because when we're in a team, now let's take that to the office and back to our pencils. If we're having discussions and we're stuck on what kind, and do you even have pencils, right? We all have computers these days, but we all have things like that. We have, I was going to say, you've got your pen and I've got my pen, right? All of my pens. And, but I think that when we're working as a team and what do we do and how does that impact what we're doing, pencils don't matter. It's why we're using the pencils. And do we need the pencil at all? Not, is it this brand or is it that brand? Is it this color or is it that color? And I think that that's an important thing that we forget. We get so stuck on the little things that we forget to think about those bigger things. And maybe it's an avoidance. Sometimes it is. Maybe it's confusion. Sometimes it is. Maybe it's even just, I feel like I am out of control of everything and I don't know what I can control, but I think I can control this. And all of those are the types of things that when we're making choices, the more aware we are, the better that we can go forward. Maybe we all need our own pencils at the office. And when we have that, then we can go, so what really matters? Why are we using these pencils? What are they going to get us toward? And how does that help our team succeed, to grow, to become more dynamic, high performance?
Yeah, fantastic. Great story. The idea of behind the name of your business, I guess, the red direction and having that strategic focus. Talk to me a little bit more about how to take that concept, how to develop that vision and bring that into the workplace or even into the family to say, well, the toothpaste or the pencils don't really matter. So that's an easy decision. Just do whatever there. Here's where we're trying to get to. This is the big picture. let's keep that in mind. Does this contribute to the big picture? Or if you have your own pencil or your own toothpaste, is that going to detract from the big picture? If not, well, just do it.
And the need for urgency fits in there too, right? So one of the things that I find, not only in our own day-to-day work, when we're working on our business, when we're developing our strategy, when we're engaging with it, compared to when we're out and we're working with customers and we're doing the things that we're working with them on strategically as well. What I see come up over and over again is we feel an urgency to make a decision right away. We can make the choice to not make the decision right away in the day-to-day. Because if it's something that could impact our vision, if it's something that could actually make an adjustment to where we might end up, we don't want to be making that in the moment in the day-to-day. But we have to recognize that that's what it is. And going back to actually having a pencil, just like you, Jürgen, or a pen, just like you, one of the things that I think is really useful, at least for me, is that I have a place that I keep all the ideas that come up that need evaluation that somebody may want an immediate answer to, but really an immediate answer is not necessary. We actually have time on our side for that. And they go into a specific place, and I evaluate them once a week when I engage with my strategy. Does this fit what we're doing? Is this on the path of where we're going? Does it help strengthen our strengths, reduce our weaknesses, or take advantage of a marketplace opportunity? And based right now or later, and based off of all of that, I can decide, great, keep it or not, what do I want to do with it? And then I can go back to clients, finding them, helping them be their best, doing the things that we said we would do for them.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And as someone who finds it really difficult to sit in uncertainty, because I think that's what the issue is here.
Yes.
You know, when you make a decision, say, okay, I'm going to do it, or I'm not going to do this. Now it's done. Now it's certain.
Yeah.
I have this brain dump board, I call it, set up, and I can quickly. It's actually on the computer, so
cool.
I do write things in books and so on, but I usually transfer the ideas in there, and they're the ones that I don't immediately decide on. And I visit those once a week, usually Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, depending on what's happening Sundays, and have a look at that and think, is there anything there that I need to action to move forward in the following week? And usually there'll be about 250 or so things on there, and most weeks, none of them make it to the weekly action. But I feel really good because, that's a great idea, but it's not a fit right now.
Yeah.
And I know that I haven't lost the idea, it's captured.
Okay, so I'm in the middle of, I'm between final locations, right? We're in an apartment building here in Kirkland right now. At some point, we'll be back in a house. So I have stuff everywhere. I just found my box with my now and later notes in it. So I actually, on Monday, I found it this last weekend. I was like, okay, yes, my day to do all that processing is on Mondays. So next week is I'm going to take the time, I'm going to go back through my now and later and find out if some of those are nevers and they're going to go straight to the bin, right? Yeah.
That's
Sometimes
right, yeah.
Time is the best answer. It's not going to be now. Not going to be ever. Let's put that in the bin. So, but I use sticky notes on a board, and I have a little tray that I randomly am taking notes all the time. And so instead of trying to document them, I just, they clutter up my computer in some way, and they'll get in my way. I'll be like, ooh, I should be looking at that. If it's a distraction, can't be there. So I actually have an actual physical place to put them. I'm hoping someday I will be like you and I can put them in a brain dump place online.
Yeah. It's you raise a really important point there, and I've started doing this a lot, and I've actually got an action point every day to remind myself, which is audit the task list.
Yes.
And it's exactly like you. It's like, well, I've been carrying this forward for about 6 weeks. I haven't done anything. Is the world going to end if I just completely ignore it and not do it?
Yeah.
Well, no. Okay, delete.
Yeah. And
what
was the reason for carrying it forward? Was it ego? Was it a desire for something that that we think would move our business forward, or a passion or a project, but turns out we don't have the energy for. See, there's some self-reflection in there too, Jurgen, that could really, that I would be curious, and I try and be curious about in myself. What is the reason something hasn't been done for 6 weeks? What is the reason it hasn't gotten the priority in that time? And being able to honor that is just a little bit of insight for maybe I don't have to carry something forward for 6 weeks again. Maybe I could find it in 3.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, sometimes they're ideas that shouldn't really be in the task list. They should have been on the brain dump board. But sometimes they're actually things that in the moment that I record them, I'm thinking, I should get to that. I should do that. It's a fit for something or other. And then other things change, or other things become higher priority, and all of a sudden it just drags on.
Yep.
And I figure, okay, if it's gone 6 weeks and I've done nothing, is it really important?
Then my next question would be did you get the other things on the list that you thought were actually your priority done?
Yes, that's a good question. And the answer is sometimes.
I hear that.
or it depends.
Ooh, that's my favorite.
It depends is always a good answer.
It depends. Oh, yeah. No, I get that completely. So now I'm curious. Can I ask you a few questions? Okay,
absolutely.
So if we're thinking about this, right, you do this on a weekly basis, and it sounds like you have a larger picture. Does your larger picture span like 3 months or a half year or an entire year when you're thinking about this brain dump stuff, and what do you put to carry forward week to week?
Yeah, I've got a larger picture that's actually kind of 3 to 5 years, and then that's broken down into a 6 month picture. What's the next 6 months look like to get to there, and then that's broken down into kind of a monthly and a weekly.
Mine's a little different. I have to your point about 3 and 5 years, I do have that. And in fact, my inspiration is a US-based artist who has died now. Her name is Georgia O'Keeffe. She drew a picture. She's famous for painting flowers. And one of her paintings was not a flower. It was actually a ladder hanging in the sky between the heavens with the stars and the ground with which we stand. And I saw that and I was like, I have no idea what the name of the picture is. I should probably know that when I tell this story. And it's hanging on my wall right over here. So you'll see me look away to look at it. And I'm like, that is my 5-year plan. Every single rung there is important. And every single time I get closer to those stars, there's going to be a new rung that I get to work toward. And maybe if I don't know it yet, I'll get to discover it. Yeah,
well, I'll have to get the name of that painting from you so we can include it in the show notes. And it sounds like a really powerful metaphor in terms of the planning. And if you could attach kind of concrete steps to each rung of the ladder,
each year that you want,
immediately triggers those things.
Yeah, and you could so you could do, and you could actually do the same thing then if you wanted to break it down. So I've got she provided the beautiful imagery of what my 5-year plan would look like, if you will. And that includes everything. It includes what we're doing at Red Direction and how we're growing and scaling and serving there. It includes what I want to do personally. It includes what I want for my family. All of those things are all included in that. And then I break it all down and I've got lists of stuff or groups of things all over the place. Oh, hey, it's called Ladder to the Moon. There we go.
Ladder to the moon.
Yeah. And so I was like, I will look that up right now while we're talking.
I love it. Yeah. All right. Now, one of the things I know you're really strong on is this idea of working on the business and kind of really taking a step back from the day-to-day running to get this bigger picture and get this focus on that ladder and on the steps to the moon.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit more about some of the ways that you help your clients do that.
Absolutely. And so everybody comes to me when other people haven't been able to help them solve their problems. And usually it's because a new tool or a new path or a new process didn't stick for the long term. And so one of the things that I look at Red Directions, just like the pointer is, well, you've decided where you're going to go, so how you're going to get there. If I was really creative, I would have come up with some other analogy related to like a backpack because you've got a journey, or a legend because it's on a map. But I didn't do that. The easiest thing to think about, though, that is universal to everybody, are kaleidoscopes. You remember those things as a kid where there's all those pieces, the pieces of glass or plastic, and you hold it up to your eye in the light and you twist it, and the picture changes based off of how each of the pieces inside falls? Every business has all those pieces, and it's unique to them. It's their unique piece. And what people forget is that what got them to where they're at is really important. It may not get them where they're going. To just leave it behind and forget to acknowledge the power with which we brought to the table to get us exactly where we're at, it's just detrimental, and it creates a gap. And usually it's like, well, I don't have the stamina to do that. Well, it's true. We've got to learn new skills. Well, if you learn a new skill, but you don't have anything to fall back on because you had to, quote unquote, get rid of it, or it wasn't going to work anymore, it's going to fail. We don't have enough fuel for that. By the way, come back to the stage. Come share my stage. There's a little bit of belief here. We got this, right? It fills that gap while those skills are being made. And I don't like to see anybody's skills and hard work negated. Now, to have any success, there has to be good stuff in there. As dysfunctional as it might be, as crazy it all might sound, as much of luck of anything else that it might be, there's still good stuff in there. And when we can find that and use that, those are the pieces of the kaleidoscope that we can go, cool, we like that, but we don't want this piece or that piece. So what do we take out, and what new things can we add to it to leverage and keep going in an iterative, and even in a, like jumping a chasm, if you will, being able to leap buildings to get to the next level of growth, of success, of development, whatever happens to be the focus of the strategy of a company.
Yeah, I love the metaphor. It's really powerful to take the idea of, what got me here and what skills I've learned and the lessons I've learned are a part of who I am, but they're also the strengths I bring to what I'm doing, even the failures that I've had.
Cheers to that. I can tell you a story of total, ignorance, right? I was talking to somebody today and they were saying to be successful, you have to have two things. You have to have arrogance and ignorance. Okay. And I'm probably good at both of those in general. And I was reflecting on that as I was, checking back in with the notes as my, having prepared for this. And I was like, there's something to be said. In the first company that I owned, we sold right before the dot-com crash. And part of our total payout was specific to achieving sales goals after we were acquired. Well, we were acquired and then the dot-com crash happened. So here we are, a tech company, and we're supposed to grow some serious amounts, like double digits, in a time where things are crumbling technology-wise all around us. These companies are being reset, right? And I didn't know that. I didn't know that it was supposed to be bad. And I just was like, okay, no problem. I have to do this. We'll figure out how to do this. And sure enough, the team with me, and it wasn't easy. There was a lot of failure along the way. And boy, did I learn a lot. In the end, though, we hit the growth goals because I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do it. And I would show up to these meetings for this big company, and I would be like, what do you mean you're not hitting your goals? I don't understand how that could be. And I'm surpassing mine. And everybody's like, oh, whatever. No, this can't be the case. And I was like, I didn't even understand. I was supposed to understand that there was something going on outside of me, right? So hindsight being 2020, what was in the air was a little bit of complacency. What was in the air was a little bit of, well, if it's so bad, I'm not going to worry too much about it. If everybody is in this boat, I'm not going to be singled out, right? All of these other things where all of our other problems could show up or take ownership or take space up in our heads and our hearts, and I'll say our guts too, was really important. And I was like, I didn't have any of that. I was like, I want this money. But even so, I say that in a very cheeky fashion because there's a part of me that was like, well, I said I was going to do it, so let's go do it, right? So of course I wanted it, but then I was like, well, I said I was going to do it. Now I'm accountable to this other party, so let's go. And we did it. And I think that that's something a little bit of ignorance of. Sometimes it's better to not know that we're not supposed to be able to do something.
Yeah, and that's a great example of a mindset where you, maybe because of the ignorance that you say, as you call it, you set yourself up for success rather than placing limitations on yourself by saying, well, gee, the environment's really bad and the .com bubble and everything's crashing and nobody's interested in buying software anymore and blah, 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 whatever the story is.
The story, our limiting belief, by the way. And if we're going to talk business, one of my favorite things to talk about, people are like, whatever, that's just this thing we do in business school, is a dynamic version of strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats analysis, right? The more dynamic we can be, the better off we can be. We can put the stories we tell ourselves in the weakness and the threat every single day of the week. What are the stories we're telling ourselves about our industry? What are the stories we telling ourselves about ourselves? And put those in the weakness column. And when we can identify those, it's a great start to finding those assumptions to really find out, are we able to break through, and what part of our kaleidoscope do we want to be working with, pulling from, and what do we need to really be looking at to change?
Yeah, that's a really great point. And it's a great way to, I love that. It's a great way to kind of reframe that SWOT analysis a little bit, because I remember doing those in the corporate world, and I always wondered, that they sound kind of the same.
They do.
Each time.
Yeah.
Like the weakness or the threats were, well, the competition might have a better product, or what else? Or the economy might tank, or, we're in chemicals, so the oil price might go up. That was always the big one. And another threat was because we were a large it was a public company, but primary shareholders were still the founding family. And so the other threat that always came up was one of the big players would buy us out. And I thought, well, they always come up. So, and I don't see any plans that we're kind of going to deal with any of that. So why is it even on there?
Yeah.
And then, and the weaknesses are kind of the same thing. Each time we do it, they're the same weaknesses as the last time. How come we haven't done anything about that?
And you do it and you stick it in a drawer. That's actually something that I work on. Oh, yeah. Half yearly or quarterly with the clients that are working at Red Direction. We have a dynamic SWOT. And I'm looking at that when a company is saying, well, this is what our 5-year goal is. This is what our 12-month goal is, or whatever their structure is for timing in the future. And here are the initiatives we have. The first thing I do is, does that match your 5-year plan? Second thing is, what do you need to do to actually be successful with your current SWOT? We use that on a regular basis, because if we're not, how do we know what choices to make? How do we know if it's urgent? How do we know if we actually have the time? How do we know it's aligned? We don't, right? It's a combination of these little tools that when we do once and we use, and I call it dynamic because as soon as one of those, typically always, as soon as something has been accomplished, that goal has been reached, that SWOT changes immediately.
That's right.
If we're willing to look at it and use it.
Yes, well, the traditional way to do it in the corporate world, in my experience when I was there, was you'd do this once a year. It would then find its way to the bottom of the drawer, and then you'd get a note saying, hey, we're going to do another one of these 12 months later or 11 months later. And where was the last one again? I must be here somewhere in the bottom of the drawer. Oh, okay. Right. Nothing's really changed.
I know.
How come we haven't done anything about this?
How come? And what are all those initiatives? What was my contribution to the initiative that was set for this year? If we reached the initiative, but our SWOT didn't change, where did we go wrong, or what do we not see? And here's the other thing. If I've got my own personal one for me, right, and you've got your own personal one for you, and we're on the same team, now when it's time for feedback, reviews, that can't, whatever it is, if it's candid and in the moment or an official process, whatever that is, we actually can reflect within ourselves and see our own successes and our own failures and our own places. So we can say, yes, these are the things that I truly accomplished, and be really proud in that fact. And I actually think that that's really important, especially for an entrepreneur or a business owner or somebody on the executive team that doesn't get that from anybody else. And I don't know if, companies I know are getting better and there are new ways to do it. So I'm not going to assume that it's still not very good. But the last time I gave a traditional employee review, I was like, this doesn't work. And I had been working since then to change that to something like this. Well, what are your goals? How does that align to what we have here? How can we support you outside of the office? Where do you want to be? And then this actually gives leadership teams and CEOs and executives the opportunity to be accountable to at least themselves, because our time gets taken up so quickly and so easily with squirrel. Oh, wait, squirrel. The next favorite thing, because it's in the moment, right?
Yes, the shiny objects. Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic advice too. And I think it's almost a human trait, isn't it, that we don't necessarily take time to, hey, I've achieved a goal, and reflect on what worked really well here, and well done. We usually say, well, gee, I could have done this one better. Oh, damn! So I'm going to beat myself up, because I should have known better. Yeah. I should have done this, or I should have done that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we kind of, and then we take that mindset forward, and we kind of forget about all the things that we actually did achieve.
And sometimes they're inadvertent, and sometimes we have no choice, and sometimes they're happy accidents, right? I believe we set up our own luck by the actions that we take. So whether it's good or whether it's bad is all in what we did in the past. How did our past self help us to get to here right now? And are we okay with that? And if we're not, that's okay. And if we are, that's okay. We can use that to make the next.
Yes, we have almost total control, right?
Almost total. I love that, Jürgen. That's exactly right. Yeah. I'm reading a book called The Tao of Pooh. Also, I don't know what it is about 1958 today, but it was written in 1958, I believe. And it's a reprint that I was like, well, I like Winnie the Pooh. This is something, I have a whole other side story if you want it. Do you want my Winnie the Pooh story of when I was a little girl? Has a hero and everything.
Why not?
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I don't know why I like Winnie the Pooh, but I had a Winnie the Pooh as a little girl, and we lived outside of Chicago, and we were picking up one of my aunts from the airport in the middle of the night. And we were driving home from Chicago O'Hare to our house outside the city, and there was road construction. And for whatever reason, I had the window open on the interstate, and I had Winnie the Pooh by the arm, maybe the leg, hanging outside the window because Winnie the Pooh wanted to fly. Well, Winnie the Pooh got lost. It got whipped from the wind.
Did fly.
He did fly. Yeah. And he wasn't in my hand. And at that moment, I'm screaming. And my dad came to the rescue. I love my dad. He's always been a hero in the most weird and unusual ways, and this is one of them. He made the time to stop in the middle of the night, even though everybody was tired, to get out of the car. And it was a good thing, because as he's getting out of the car, I can see my Winnie the Pooh and all of the construction lights in the dark. And what is coming at my Winnie the Pooh? A steamroller. Not a little steamroller, one of those big steamrollers, because they are building a road. And here comes my dad. He is the most awesome dad. And he goes in and he swoops and he picks up this Winnie the Pooh and he brings it back to the car. And I never put Winnie the Pooh out the window again. And why does this relate to what we're doing? Because it's a product of who I am. I am now impacted. Could something as bad as a steamroller getting my Winnie the Pooh affect me in this decision, by the way? So I was going someplace somewhat clever with this. But we don't know. We don't know, right? Yeah. Well, I do. That affects my decision making.
Fantastic. And so how does the book relate to that?
Right, the Tao of Pooh. Okay, so there we go. Thank you for bringing us back. They talk about, well, Winnie the Pooh is considered to be what? He's very in the moment, he's very present, and some would say very simple. Well, that learned curiosity, that internal, what is here right now, is a really important thing to consider, because there's always going to be noise around. And so you're always going to have somebody that's going to always know what to do and think they have the right thing. Always are going to have somebody who's going to be giving advice regardless if they know what's going on. You're always going to have somebody that's super exuberant, and you're always going to have somebody that's really timid and maybe even a little shy. And so when we can understand which part of us, right, which of those personas is showing up, more importantly then being able to go, yeah, welcome. Now sit over here so I can actually experience, think, feel, what am I trying to do here, and create a small space. A small space doesn't have to be big, whether you call it silence or stillness. Being able to practice that and get to it quickly is something that can really help us, not only to make sure we're oriented the right way, but so that we can really hear and understand how our filter should be calibrated for what we take forward with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. And there's a lot of self-awareness and self-reflection in that, right?
Yes.
And I think that's something that we kind of don't do enough of in today's world.
I agree.
And there's so many lessons that we can teach ourselves simply by going through that process.
Oh, yeah. And I will tell you, I am not learned in any way about Taoism, but I can tell you I really like Winnie the Pooh. And so it's a great introduction for me to that kind of concept of thinking, but to the point that we share curiosity, right, Jürgen? We share curiosity. And in that curiosity, one of the things that ends up happening that I think is really important is that we can be curious. We don't have to be curious about everything, and we can be curious about what we want to be curious about. Not what other people think we should be, right?
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, this is fabulous, Jess. Obviously, we could go on talking for ages and sharing stories. But I think it's a good point now to move on to the buzz, which is our innovation round.
Yeah.
And it's our, it's the same 5 questions I ask of every guest. The idea being that you give the listener something really inspirational to take away and put into action today as a result.
Mm-hmm. I'm ready.
So what's the number one thing anyone can do to be more innovative?
Slow down.
Slow down.
Do you want more? Do you want more than a one-word answer? Slow down. And if you,
it might be helpful. Yeah.
And whether you're doing this for your business or for yourself, for those long-term goals that you have set for yourself, I call it a present retreat. And the present retreat is made up of a few things. The present retreat is what I do on Mondays. You seem to do on Sunday afternoons when you have the space to do so. And it's a time where there's a reflection, there's an assessment, there's a thoughtfulness, and then there are some decisions about what is a priority right now and what is a priority later. And being able to make those decisions in that stillness, that space where it's protected time that nothing else gets in. You're not answering the telephone. You're not looking at your email. You're not taking texts or calls from clients. It is a bubble with which you put yourself in. So it could be stillness, but it could just be a bubble. And you're sitting and you're looking at your kaleidoscope. What was, what is, and is it aligned to where you want to go? And work from that. And that's what I call a present retreat. And my rule of thumb is start at 4 hours a day, but it should be really a whole day. I say, I used should. It's the first time I've done that in a long time. Dang, let me rephrase that. It is something that the more that you can put toward it in one block of time, the quicker you can make decisions and evaluate between those times. So you'll be able to weed out. I might have to look at that, but I know I don't have to look at this. I might look at that, but I know I don't have to look at that. So that's what a present retreat really helps with.
Yeah, I love that. And we actually applied that concept, and this is pre-COVID, of course. We spent 10 days usually, or 8 to 10 days with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and we actually physically retreated to a wonderful tropical location, made sure the environment was such that everybody was pampered and taken care of. And then we spent that time doing that reflection, doing visioning exercises, doing planning, and really assessing, is everything on track here, and where are we looking to go in 5 years, in 3 years, in 1 year, and what are the plans that we put in place now? And then we have quarterly reviews of that. So it's sort of very analogous to that. So doing a mini version of that each week.
Yes, it is. And then doing it quarterly with a group of people like what you're facilitating, or with your board of directors, or with a peer group, right? Could also be very useful between those annual ones. That's exactly right.
Excellent. So what's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
That.
That.
Actually, well, there you go.
Using the same answer for two questions.
No, I know. I'll add to them. I have activities that I do that are not related to what I do, right? So I love to read, and I read nonfiction, and I read strategy, and I read biographies, and I read a lot of nonfiction in general. One of the things that I think is really and that, of course, lends itself to the way that I think and the way that I show up and the craft that I do and how I'm developing myself to really set up the products and the paths for which Red Direction clients are served. In addition to that, I play the flute. I am a Girl Scout, and I love to drink tea and do puzzles. And those are the types, and by the way, and that's, of course, in addition to being outside in nature and a whole bunch of other things. Those, I really relish those, and I rely on them, because if I don't do those things and I'm not taking care of myself and letting my brain work in other ways, I'm not going to get some of those really great ideas to actually bring to my present retreat, to let things bubble up that I could take notes and go, oh, that came up yesterday. I'm not really going to look at it until Monday, but this thing showed up because I gave it space, because I'm doing something else.
Yeah. So you're allowing your unconscious to kind of surface things that are going on for you. And I think that's a really important point, to balance and take time out to do the things that are not necessarily business related, that are passions or things that enjoy. And often people get into this, business owners get into this mode of, I don't have time for that, so I'm just going to keep bashing my head against the wall here to get this thing done. And yet the counterintuitive thing is, if you take time away and go and enjoy something else, usually you go, oh, that's the answer.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So whatever it is, it could be varied, right? Whatever you're doing that's not your regular work, can you be all in because you're using a different part of your brain?
Excellent. All right. Do you have a favorite resource you use most often?
Oh, that's so crazy. The answer is I do. And it's usually nature, believe it or not. So my favorite resource is to get outside. The one that turns out to be the most useful. And now if you're talking are you talking like a technology tool?
No,
okay.
It could be anything.
I was going to say, because I'm like, being outside in the fresh air, being able to see the sky, even if it's cloudy. I know sometimes you have cloudy there, like I have cloudy here. And today it snowed, which was kind of cool. But I think that that's important. And sticky notes are my second favorite thing. I can randomly be in my kitchen and I have a sticky note. I could wake up in the middle of the night, I have a sticky note. I could be at a client meeting on site somewhere and have total unrelated thing, and I'll throw it on a sticky note, and they come back and they go in my little bin so that I can evaluate them later.
Different colors?
Oh, yes. I have the rainbow. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. I love the different colors and different shapes. So I've got heart-shaped ones and diamonds and squares and circles and ellipses and whatnot.
I love it. That's right.
All right. What's the best way to keep a client on track?
Present retreat, held in accountability by your dynamic SWOT and the goals that you have set for your 5-year, and then coming all the way down to quarterly to get to your annual goals.
There we go. And we've described it all in detail as we've had this conversation.
That's right. Do you want to see what, I know nobody's going to be able to see this. I could describe it. Do you want to see what mine looks like? My quarterly looks like? Okay. Because I am tactile.
Show it to us, because we will have some people watching video.
Okay, so I am tactile. Oh, let me see. I'm going to have papers fly all out of here. Y'all know I like paper. Each quarter, I come up with, I have a book, okay? And this is my 2-page spread for my quarter. And what is my big goal, and what are my intentions that I need to make sure to help get to my big goal? And then what are the big things? These are my rocks, right? What are the things that if I get done, I know everything else will fall into place? And then as I go along, I write down my accomplishments as I get to these things, or if other stuff showed up. And down below are just some resources and inspiration. I draw. I usually have 4 of them.
I love the drawing, yeah.
I like to color. I think it's really important to just see how stuff shows up when it's not on a line as you're typing along, going line to line to line. And then I look in on this every single week. Actually, I look at it every day because it sits on my desk. But this is part of my present retreat. And I bring that in.
Beautiful.
Because it's real. I really think that it's important to be able to look at things in a different way. And when we're on one mode a lot, taking time, I'm not a good drawer. All my stuff is 2D or stick people, but that's okay. I can still get my point across in a picture for myself because it's all it's for.
There's still a story for you there, isn't there?
Yeah.
That's why I encourage people to draw as well and say it's not about being an artist.
That's right.
All right, and for those people just listening into this, we'll take a clip, a shot of that and add the photo to the show notes so that you can check it out. All right, and finally, what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
Play. and I say that in a way that I don't do it enough. This is actually one of my goals for this year is how can I play more? How can I let go more? How can I be a little less serious? Because the more serious I am, the more focused I am, the more disciplined I am, the more I'm going to miss and the more I'm going to butt up against things that maybe I don't need to butt up against, kind of like the toothpaste choice. So I really think, play will allow those thoughts to come through you, and your thoughts really do matter. What you have to give and how they show up in the world is to be figured out. If they don't have a place to show up, a stage for them to be displayed upon, a diving board with which you get to make a choice to go forward or go over the edge or go back down the ladder, right? All of those things come down to it. Just so that's it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's a great parting advice to leave our listener today. What your thoughts and your message do matter.
That's right.
So thanks, Jess. This has been really fabulous. Now, where can people reach out, find out more about you, and maybe even say hello and say thanks for what you've shared today?
Just type in my name in your favorite search engine and all kinds of things are going to show up. You can definitely find me on LinkedIn and on Twitter by searching Jess Dewell. And then that's probably the best. I would say that's the best. Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll add those to the show notes so people can click straight through. Finally, who else should I get on the show and why?
Oh, you should have told me that ahead of time. I'm kidding. That was actually not on my list. There is a gentleman who is a thinker, like you are a thinker, and he is somebody that I've known for many years. He's written a few books now, and his name is David Amerland. And what he does is he takes a lot of information and distills it down. The last book that I read of his, I think he's working on a new one, was called something about a sniper. I'll have to dig that out. He was working and interviewing Navy SEALs about what are they doing and how are they making decisions. And before that, he built his brand awareness on the quickly changing evolution of technology and the way that we search as humans compared to the way technology allows us to get results from the technology that's being used. And so he came from that realm and is a really good distiller of information and a great storyteller.
Fantastic. Yeah. I'll look forward to that conversation. So we'll get you to introduce us to David and begin that conversation with him and hopefully get him on the show.
That'd be cool. He's closer to your time zone, I think, or farther away. He's in Europe. So
okay. Well, that means I have to do it at the other end of my day, but it all works.
Right? It all works.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, Jess. This has been absolutely fascinating. We've had a lot of fun. I think this counts as play as well. So
it does.
One of the things that occurred to me when you talked about more play is how can you make business more play, and how can you incorporate more play into business so that it moves you forward in that red direction.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing all that with us today. I've really had fun. Hope you have too, and please do stay in touch.
Thanks for having me.